There's no better model of getting uncomfortable than Jesus Christ. So you're probably thinking, that's great, Angela. So you're telling me we're supposed to get swallowed by a whale or maybe stoned or beaten with rods? And I say, no, that's not my message here for you this morning. I'm calling you, and I believe God is calling you to get uncomfortable with what God is calling you to do. Each of you is called and chosen to be at Westmont right now. I know some of you may be even questioning, is this the place for me? And maybe I should transfer, and I'm not sure why I'm here. But regardless, today, it is God's will that you are here in this place. And it matters to God that the mission of Westmont is fulfilled within you, that you're growing intellectually, that you're growing personally, and that you're growing spiritually. That is God's desire for you now. And I believe these are the three realms right now in your life where God is calling you to be uncomfortable. And I want to start and just look intellectually, what does this look like? And here's what I hope it looks like for you. I hope that you're wrestling with ideas. Literally, that you're thinking about getting the punching gloves out and wrestling with these ideas. Do you ever get to the place where you feel like you just need to find out more about a topic? Where you're maybe kept up at night wondering why something seems the way it does? Where you struggle and you get uncomfortable trying to understand a complex and difficult idea? And where you feel so torn by this that you seek out trustworthy perspective on the subject? When I began at Westmont, I considered being a pastor, but I wrestled deeply with the question of women in pastoral roles. I was really uncomfortable for quite a while as I tried to sort out what I believed about this issue. I probably sought out every professor in the religious studies department to basically pick their brains and say, what do you think the Bible's saying on this and telling us on this? And I sat in it, what they told me, and I processed it, and I prayed through it, and eventually I found peace and direction in this regard. And that's part of what I believe it looks like to wrestle with an idea. I just see a beautiful humility in this discomfort of wanting to know more about a particular idea because it means that we know that we don't know everything. And I believe that's where true change originates. So I also hope that your intellectual discomfort comes in the form of some good and hearty conflict. My staff is probably laughing right now because I remember when I first started and said, we need to conflict with each other. We need to disagree with each other because I believe that's how we learn. I rarely had the guts, to be honest, as a Westmont student, to disagree with anyone or to confront them, even when I felt strongly about something. It was just too uncomfortable for me, and it wasn't really worth it. But I believe that healthy conflict is at the heart of true and deep learning. And I think I finally began to learn that after I graduated and decided to go to grad school. As Jane mentioned, after my 4 years at Westmont, I worked here for a year as a secretary. And, in that year, I decided I really want to work at a college. This is what I feel really drawn to. So I decided to go back to grad school. And I decided that after being at Westmont for 5 years, I needed something different. I needed to get outside of my comfort zone a little bit more. So I chose a large public university on the East Coast, cold place. I thought, boy, nothing quite so different as these two schools. And I got up and I went, and I was the only Christian in my whole class in grad school. And I heard things that I've never heard before, things like there's no such thing as truth, and that they're only personal truths, and that we can't really hope to understand anything other than ourselves. And I really, really wrestled with this, and I also came into some conflict that I couldn't avoid. I remember vividly one of my first classes in my graduate program. It was a discussion-based class, and on this particular day, each person, we were going around the circle, and everybody had to share what their faith beliefs were. Now, and for the vast majority of people in this class, they either shared, you know what, I'd consider myself an agnostic. I'm not sure if there's anything to be known about God. There might be a God out there, but I'm not sure. And then there were others who considered themselves atheists in a variety of beliefs around these two issues. But remember, my one classmate said, you know what, I'm an atheist. I just don't believe we can know anything, and I just really don't believe there's a God. And I remember that another student in the class looked at me because I had already shared, and he said, Angela, do you think he's going to hell? And so after I just about peed my pants, I composed myself a little bit and I said, I don't think I make those decisions. That's not my decision to make. But I was able to share a little bit more about what I did believe. And I just realized through that conflict, I just entered into a lot more deep conversations that helped me to grow in ways that I never had before. They really challenged my thinking and they really forced me to own what I believed. And I realized that good conflict really does look like Proverbs 27:17, when it says that as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. I do believe that's what can happen through good conflict. Finally, intellectual discomfort can come in the form of listening. And, I'd go so far as to say that for a lot of us, the most uncomfortable thing perhaps that we do intellectually is staying quiet and truly listening, especially when you disagree with someone. Unfortunately, most of us probably don't get to the discomfort stage, though, because before we've gotten there, we've interrupted the other person and said, well, I don't know about that, or, I disagree. But I believe that true, deep, attentive listening is pretty uncomfortable. And probably most of you are sitting here, maybe 33%, maybe 50% listening to me, and actually that's probably pretty good. But maybe intermittently you're thinking about your quiz coming up, or how crummy or how great your weekend was, or maybe you'd rather be sleeping, or maybe how the Dodgers did this weekend. By the way, they lost, sorry. Anyways, intellectually, getting uncomfortable is deep listening for understanding. In that uncomfortable space of deep listening, I believe we are changed. So we've talked a little bit about intellectual discomfort, wrestling with ideas, conflict, and true listening. But I believe the second realm that God is calling each of you to be uncomfortable in is personally, and I just want to talk briefly about socially and physically discomfort. So socially, for a long time, I was very content to be with people that thought and looked just like me, until I realized how much I appreciated and had to learn from people that were different than me. I think about social discomfort a lot when I think about political figures who get to choose their closest advisors and their team, if you will. I have great respect for those politicians that choose people who think very differently than them. Because honestly, it'd be a whole lot easier and a lot more comfortable if they surrounded themselves with people of similar minds. And they may even get more done as far as getting done looks like, because everyone agrees and they can move forward quickly. But I guarantee they'll think through complex issues more thoroughly and effectively with a variety of ideas and opinions if they have different voices representing different ideas. It's great to have a close-knit group of friends who are all headed in the same direction. I'd say that Jesus did with his 12 disciples. But I've also never seen someone as intentional as Jesus was in seeking out and inviting in those who were very different than him. Whether it was the prostitutes, the tax collectors, little children, he invited these people in. As you get uncomfortable socially reaching out to those with different values, in different cultures, and different interests, I think that you'll find that you see through a very different lens, that you see things and people differently, and that ideas and thoughts you had about particular people or ideas are just changed, and that you grow. Physically, now, this is probably the easiest realm to understand how getting uncomfortable makes us stronger. And I think it's pretty accurately summed up in the adage, no pain, no gain. As we work out and we struggle and we push our body, we know that muscles tear a bit. And that's pretty uncomfortable. They tear and they break down, but they do that so that they can grow back together stronger. I played soccer, as Jane mentioned, at Westmont for 4 years, and I remember my junior year, and I'll never forget it, because at the start of that year, I could tell that my team was different.